So we're on page 191 now, in the tools and the materials and styles chapter. Um, Actually, not even called materials and styles. What is it technically called? Last chapter of the book, sketching styles and mediums. There we go. So this little video is going to cover Copic markers and ballpoint pen. Not so much about the Copic marker. I'm not really going to shade so much because that's hard to do with the pen, but I'm using the Copic marker as a way to block out the sketch. And so much like the other sketches on this page, they're all done with the same technique. And you see I started with a single vanishing point, and then I estimated off to the right hand side of the page, the right hand vanishing point. You see the horizon out there in the distance. And you also see that I'm using quite a bit of vertical convergence. So I'm using really like a fisheye lens here, like a very wide angle lens. But I didn't place my vanishing point at the center of the image like we've talked about earlier in the book. I'm actually doing a crop of what a fisheye lens would see. So I've cropped kind of the right hand side of the image. And you can see that my true vertical is really off, here right where the vanishing point is to the left. So it's kind of going to be a super wide angle distorted image. But as I took quite a bit of, I took some time and blocked this thing out, I thought I would talk a little bit about the perspective drawing, not just about the mediums. The mediums are pretty simple. You start with light marker, block it out, and then go in with a ballpoint after the fact. So more importantly though, I want to talk about some of the perspective drawing techniques that are happening here. So you see I started with the wheels. I established my wheel base first, the rear wheel. I estimated that, and then I multiplied, put 3 wheels in between, and then estimated the front wheel, and then I estimated 3 wheels wide across. So sort of imagine the ellipse flipped 90 degrees and then put it across to the other side, and then I've actually found the center, drawing an X, and there I located a center line wheel. I took the front wheels and I moved it over to the Y plane. So now I'm drawing, now basically I'm drafting. So I'm drawing almost like an orthographic view on my Y plane in my perspective sketch. So just like the section drawing done earlier in the book, this is now the center line of my vehicle, of my cab. So it's going to be a rear 3/4 view. Well, it's not really 3/4, but definitely it's the camera's much more to the rear of the vehicle than the front. And I'm just sort of setting some limits here. I'm trying to find my true vertical. I'm setting the limit out at the side, just behind the rear wheel. Actually, sorry, that's a line inboard a little bit. I'm setting the width of the cab on the ground, and then I'm projecting it upward. And there's a line across the front. So I'm really just drawing like this thing's invisible. So drawing through the whole form and doing it all with a light marker, so I can still end up with a nice drawing in the end, even after drawing through the whole thing with lots of construction lines. Again, this is probably my favorite technique, sketching with the light marker. It's pretty quick because it's permanent, and also allows you to make mistakes. And it's a bit sort of fuzzy in a way, like it's not super precise, but in a way I kind of like that in doing quick sketches. I can make it more precise when I do an overlay and blow it up, etc. So that's always stuff you can do after the fact. So I just put it in the side window there, and I can see through to the dashboard, so I put that in. Added some width to the front tire, adding some width to the rear tires now. The far side interior wheel position. So this is actually one that I had on my YouTube channel as a free tutorial Friday, and it was playing at 400% speed, and so this is actually pretty close to real speed. I went back and tried to pull all the clips back down to sort of real-time speed, so you can see what the real drawing looks like, and I can talk now more about the technical aspects as it is now a part of our app and a part of the book, as opposed to on my YouTube channel, where I try to keep things a little bit more brief. Okay, so I'm now drawing the top view on the Z plane on the ground. Then I'm going to project that up. That sets the limits, and And I know now I'm going to set the ground clearance, so there's the bottom of the side pod of that, and then I'm setting now a notch here in the Z-plane. That's the notch in or around the front wheel. So you can see already I've got the cab blocked out, I've got the center line, and I've got the start of the top view of the rest of the back part of the semi-truck. Just added a little radius to that cab on the trailing edge there on those corners, and I used the double line technique for the near corner, and then for the far corner I just subtracted off a little bit. And here I'm dropping in a couple little vents, and I'm going to pull a little relief out of this flat, this kind of vertical cab, the back of it. I'm going to pull it back a little bit along the Y-plane. So I pulled on the center line a little bit there, and then I'm readjusting the sections. That's what I like about the marker. You can flip over to the fat side of it, and just block in some shadows, and that helps you to start to visualize the volumes of your shape. And a lot of times when I do these sketches, I just do really simple top lighting. I mean, we're sort of built in as humans, we're built we default to top lighting, I should say. So whenever we see some shading, we always expect that it's top lit, because when we're inside, most of the time the lights are in the ceiling. When we're outside, the light's above our head. So we're really hardwired to understand form when it's top lit. Okay, and there's a couple more details now as the volumes are starting to take shape. And when I pause, and you see me with the pen sort of hovering over the page, I'm thinking about where's the next line going to go. I'm actually thinking about the design, thinking about the styling, trying to pre-visualize the shapes before I commit the pen to paper. So you see that a lot of times, that the pen looks like it should be making a line, but it's not. It's actually just hovering over an area and almost like pre-drawing it in the air just above the piece of paper. Okay, now we're going to switch to the pen. And also my lighting seems to have switched on this clip. Looks like maybe there was a cloud went by. So this was shot with my older camera back in February, I believe. But it's got all the good stuff that we need on applying all the things we've talked about in the book so far. So there I've just dropped in the minor axis, and now I can align my ellipse guide on the minor axis, and I'm trying to find the right size. This degree, let me see if I write down the number or if I can catch the number. It looks like it's maybe around a 65-ish, 70. So 70-degree ellipse. And finding the right size for the wheel. You see I take my time lining it up on the minor axis, and then you see when I spin that pen around there, I'm purposely weighting the top of it a little bit, and then I leave it lighter at the bottom, like there's a little highlight, because I know I'm doing a deep dish profile for that rim for the wheel. What I mean by that is the center is inward from the outside plane of the wheel, and so the light would catch down on that inside part of the rim, and so I make the line lighter there at the bottom. And here's the tire, and I know I want to make that side strong because that's going to be the silhouette on the leading edge, but on the left I leave it very, very light because there's going to be a radius there. And then here I'm going to push the far side of the tire nice and strong because we see the silhouette there, and then let it fade as it comes back. So that's what I end up with, the far side of the tire, right, the near side edge, and then you can see I'm using my guideline now, and I'm using my vanishing point to complete that other part freehand. So I'm blending the two planes of the tire, the far side and the near side. And now I'm adding the cast shadow, which is basically just the top view straight down. And that's it for wheel and tire for the back. Now let's go in here. So when I start inking and I start working with the ballpoint pen, I usually work foreground to background, as you've seen on the when I was inking the environment sketch. I can't remember what page that was anymore, but here's an example of that. So when I know that there's nothing overlapping, I can go right in, put in some nice strong lines. But I wouldn't draw, say, for instance, the far side tire first, because I don't know exactly where it's going to end. And so that's in the interest of trying to do a nicer sketch, is this sort of working foreground to background and getting the overlaps set up. And I know that all this element along the center line is going to overlap, right, the things that are behind it, so work on that one first. Like I knew my tire was going to overlap that center piece. And I'm just running those design lines. See there, I'm searching for the line there a little bit. You saw a slight pause and thinking about where's the line going to connect. And same thing here, a little double line to indicate a radius, just like the when I radiused that box earlier in the book. Another radius, and then it kicks forward with a little scoop probably there behind that front tire, or maybe just a little piece of trim down there, then notching inward to make space for the front tire. And you see I just rolled a 70 degree there. But I like to do that on my sketches, so it reminds me of the degree. So should I blow this up and do an overlay, then I can know which ellipse guide to grab right away. Now my Picket ellipse guides, I'm not making a mistake here, trust me, my Picket ellipse guides were made wrong, incorrectly. My 75 degree ellipse guide, the major axis is actually the minor. So I actually measured these with dividers and a ruler to double check, but they were actually stamped 90 degrees incorrect. Or however this ellipse guide was made, it's totally defective. It still works, you just have to hold it the wrong way for how it was intended. So you can see I put a big ink mark there with a Sharpie pen to remind myself, hey, this ellipse guide is messed up. Be sure to hold it, the opposite way. So don't be confused there. I wasn't lining up my ellipse guide improperly. It's just defective, and I've lived with it defective for 26 years, so it still works. I just have to remind myself not to hold it the correct way. So here I'm using the straight edge of the ellipse guide, put it on my vanishing point. I put a minor axis through there, and now I'm going to try and slide around my ellipse guide on the minor axis until I find the right size for the tire. This is, I think I just saw the number go by, this is a 50 degree, and you see right there I just checked to make sure the degree was correct. So you see I was just drawing over the top. Maybe want to wind that back a bit, 30 seconds. And you'll see with my pen I was hovering over and I was just visualizing, if the vertical hits tangent to that ellipse I'm about to draw, will it connect, if those 2 points where it hits tangent to the vertical, will that connect to a guideline that's going to my right vanishing point? And it looked like it would, and so I know I have the right degree. If it wasn't going to create that scenario that we explained much earlier in the book about how to place ellipses in perspective, then I would have had to pick a different degree. But with a wide angle lens, this is a very acceptable and expected degree change from the rear wheel to the front wheel. It's about right now we're at 20 degree. 20 degree is using a very strong wide angle lens. A long lens you would expect to see maybe only a 5 or 10 degree change, and you wouldn't see that curvilinear distortion that I have of my verticals either. So there I helped with a new little guideline back to my vanishing point, and now that I have the sort of top and bottom of the tire just very lightly, now it helps me size the ellipse. And sometimes you have to cheat it. See how I scooch that ellipse guide down a little bit? That's to get to the bottom, and then I move it up just a little bit to reach the top. And your ellipse guides will always, you don't have every single size. So the convergence is going to tell you one size in your sketch, and you need another one. So you just have to sort of nudge it around a little bit and then cheat it when you do the stroke. And there's top view. It's my tire. Top view on the ground, so it gives me the cast shadow of my light straight up. And I'm just indicating a little bit of suspension in here, a couple of pivot points, maybe reaching over to hold the front wheel. We should see some stuff in there, some mechanicals. And I'm going to push the strength of that silhouette a little bit so it overlaps those mechanical bits. And I know this is the bottom line. I'm adding a little part line there so it's got a little extra bit. And now I'm going to pop in that vent. Trying not to move this, trying not to spin the page here, so it makes it a little easier to see for viewing, but it of course means that I have to move my arm around it in some odd kind of positions to more easily draw nicer lines. So we see in that vent there some little cooling fins or something. And I'm continuing with that double line, so it tells me it has a little radius that runs around there. Here's the front, rolling up from the front up under the cab, and I want to remind myself of where the vanishing point is. You see me do that quite a bit. Before I get ready to draw a line that goes to the left vanishing point, a lot of times I like to reach out and touch where that line's going to go and pre-visualize it. That helps me keep the perspective correct. And this is sort of, I draw this perspective a lot. I like this wide angle lens positioned just with a point of view just above the rear wheel and behind it a little bit. Sets up for a dramatic taper and rake to the front, because then the front gets a lot smaller. So you get a lot of rake built into that, meaning that the front looks lower and back looks larger. And it makes for a nice dramatic automotive sketch. So putting in a couple little cut lines here and there. And now I'm getting ready to drop in the vent. So a couple little ribs there on top of that. So I see I plan it out with a couple little tick marks and then do my best to have those things taper up to the front, and then I'm going to terminate them with a little bit of extra heavy line weight there. That helps to show where those little fins are. So I just sort of notch those to cut them off a little bit, and helps your eye see them as individual fins inside that bigger vent shape. Okay, now time to detail out the cab a little bit. So starting to define the lower edge, and those are more like tangency lines that I've just drawn there, which really connect those the radius on the side. And here the radius rolls away at the front, so we really can't see that. We maybe catch a little line right at the edge. That's the door cut. And here's the trailing edge of the door cut. And maybe a little foot step area. And some hinges for the door to open. And I've got a little radius there up around the top. So it has like a little shoulder there that wraps here to the back a little bit. And then I'm going to drop in the window. So you can see I'm building out the shapes before I worry about the volumes. And now I'm going to add some thickness for the pillar there. And let's see, now I'm going to have to trying to figure out the window and if there's going to be another cut line across it, which there is. So I just added another little pillar, so it's got a tiny little window behind the door and a little drop cut here on the side glass. So it drops down, and then I have some thickness, and it's much easier to make flat glass through there. So see the cut gets thicker where the shoulder is. And that thickness change helps to reveal, right, that radius and the fullness of that part of the door panel. And we see the visor through the front windshield. So this is where drawing through with my marker really helped me. See a little dashboard and maybe a little bobblehead character sticking up there on the dash. There's my guy sitting in there. And then detailing a few more, little door handle position. And now continue this line upward. And then try and figure out if does that radius go to the back or not, and no, it doesn't. That little shoulder must fade out by the time it gets back to that radius, because it's nice and smooth up that corner, and that tells me that that radius on the side just below the side window fades. And there I connected my silhouette to my sections of the corners, and that's how I knew where the silhouette went for the roof. And then this curls back under, sort of drawing some tangency lines, so really like X sections across there, and I'm making that into like a little vent. And really it's, placing that vent there is really all about helping the viewer understand the section rolls under for the cab. And there's kind of a hole there where that cab has a structure that notches into it. And now just add a couple little tech details and bits indicate how the thing might be assembled. And you see I put another couple little lines there across the back. They could be manufacturing lines, but it's really there as a section to help the viewer understand that rolls under. And all the time when I'm reaching out of frame and my pen disappears, it's because I'm touching it onto a paper towel or a Weeble pad or something in order to keep the ink off of it from balling up. And then come back, and it allows me to keep my line weight nice and clean. Little double line on that. It's either made out of two pieces and there's a little gap there around those two, or that could be also a little radius. And now I'm trying to mirror it over to the other side. It only pokes back there at center, maybe in real world scale, maybe only a couple of inches, and so it's hardly offset at all. Okay, dropping in the rear window, adding a little thickness, and then of course we can't see the thickness at the bottom because it's hidden, and trying to figure out where is that window on the other side. That's the center line. So I'm just mapping the center line coming down the back window to help me place that. Maybe that's another vent or a rear brake light or something. That's the silhouette on the far side. And I've got to mirror this across. And you see I'm using my vanishing point to the left, transferring those points to the far side. And then I'm just guessing the relative position based on the proportions. So I look at the proportions of one side, and you can see I drew it a little too far down on that far side there. A couple more little details. And here I'm putting some centerline features, and that really helps to show that offset from the rear window, that it only sticks back just a little bit. And I need to reinforce this perspective going to the left vanishing point, so put another little vent there. And let's put a couple little design lines across that. Again, that could just be cross hatching, that could be actual part lines, could be vents. And here I'm kind of made it louvered, vents cutting across there, really to help that look, more to reinforce the width and the perspective across the cab. That's kind of an awkward tangency right there. I would prefer if that centerline part overlapped further, or if the far corner of the cab overlapped behind it. It's not really a term, underlap. So you'd have to say it overlapping. The centerline volumes would be nice if they overlapped. Try to avoid awkward tangencies, that being one of them. Okay, now detailing my wheel, I've decided it's going to have eight vent holes. So first I lay out the 4 using my vertical and my right vanishing point, and then I just split the difference between the two and lay in the next 4. And that's a quick and easy way to divide it into 8. Okay, this is going to be set inward, so I'm just adding a little bit of value to it. And I'm also going to go up and then across, and I'm going to do a 5-spoke wheel here at the back. So you see I use my height line. Okay, and then I measure over, and I know that 1/3 of the top, right? You know this because you've already seen how we divide ellipses earlier in the book. So I've located those points using that method. I can't reference the page number right now. I don't remember what page, but I know we covered it. And now I'm using that point system that we use, using the height line, and I'm connecting back to make my spokes. So there's a 5 holes cut into that deep dish rim. And now I'm trying to draw the top view on the ground, and this is where this drawing is actually really inaccurate, is that I'm seeing, wait a minute, my cast shadow for the near side tire is really close to this center line shadow. How can that be? Because my far side tire doesn't really hit in that position. So now I'm struggling with, where did I make the mistake? And see, I'm thinking, that wheel can't be there, so something's off. And when I look at it now, it's easy to see my center line is actually off. Because you see that shadow that I have. Right now I'm double checking the width of my tire, and then here, okay, yeah, my tire is the shadow's too fat. So that's really the true width. And then move my shadow over a little bit, trying to fix my center line mistake. And then move the near side tire over a little bit. So that was the weakest part of that drawing. And that's probably because I didn't spend enough time plotting my center line, making sure that the wheels were really that accurate. You can see I really roughed it in there with the marker, and then I just went and trusted the marker as being accurate, and it wasn't as accurate as it needed to be. So I had to make a slight correction there. I didn't bother to redraw the far side wheel because it's small and it's in the distance, and if I was doing an overlay, I would have drawn through all the way and fix it up if I was going to make it larger. You see it's a fairly small sketch, so because it's the far side wheel, I can kind of get away with it, let it go. But still not happy about it. To this day, I'm upset. Not really. Happens all the time. No big deal. Just fix it in an overlay. What's more important is that you're able to identify the reason why something might be wrong, the fact that it does look wrong in the first place. That's what's most important, because then you develop your eye and the sensitivity to see, and then you have the tools and the knowledge to fix those things. So they never really bother me. It's just always a little frustrating because you always want to have it be as the best it can be. And always adding my signature number 5, making it a racing truck, and add a couple more little details here, and then we're going to probably wrap it up with a little bit of additional line weight. So just dropping a little side vent coming out of the cab. Probably working up a sweat driving this racing truck around, so need a little ventilation. And continue up with a couple more sections. These are just cut lines put on to add detail, add a little visual interest, maybe to access some mechanical bits in there. So these add a little realism, and maybe we see a little bulge there for the grille or the headlights. So just adding a few little things we see beyond to influence the silhouette. Add a couple more little details, and we're wrapping it up. We're down into the last 3 minutes of this demo, and I think this is our third to last, almost done with our video tutorials actually for this entire book. Hope you've enjoyed them so far. We've enjoyed doing them, and we'll keep freshening these up. So this one might be the video for the next month, and then when you see an upgrade on the app, be sure to check back and download it, because it means there's some new content. And also, if you're accessing these things via the website, we'll update those at exactly the same time we do the app. So you just have to check back and look for new content and look for updated videos. So again, noting my degree of the front wheel. If I choose to blow this up and do an overlay at some point, I know to just grab my 50-degree ellipse guide. Adding a little bit of details here and there. Now I'm going to push a little bit of line weight. I'd love to push that line weight really strong on the center line to hide that far side tire, which I improperly drew. And on the underside, and now here's a spin the pad. Really helps me to get a proper, a better mechanical advantage, biomechanical advantage, to make nicer line weight. So don't be afraid to spin that pad around and use your muscle memory now to make nicer lines. And a little jump cut there for excitement. Make sure you're still awake. And let's wrap up the outlining of it. That little back element's not drawn very accurately either now that I look at it. That's also frustrating, but it's okay. Can always go make it better. But most importantly, I think it illustrates the techniques that we've been helping you learn throughout this book. XYZ section drawing, been drawing through it. That really helps to see the entire volume. Also adding a little bit of line weight at the end to emphasize my silhouette, some of the overlapping. And it's just two tools, quick Copic marker, block in using just like a number 1 or a 0. So 10% or even a 0 works if just you need to be able to see it. And that's really all it was. And then I went straight to ballpoint. And the nice thing about this, you could take this sketch and you could scan it, especially if you go in and spend time doing some nice strong silhouette lines. You could scan this and then just do a levels adjustment inside Photoshop, and you can get rid of almost all that marker work, and you'll be left with a really nice line drawing that's ready to render. So it's a nice technique. So, and I think that the really light value underlay there, or the guidelines, add some texture, add some nice visual texture that makes it easier for people to understand the volumes, because they can understand the kind of the environment. We can sort of see a distant horizon there. We can understand the grid that this thing is living in, and reinforces our point of view. So I think it adding a few graphics here to the tires, give them a bit more realism, like they've got some printed white lettering on them or something. And we're almost done with this one, and then time to move on to the next. So you can see the printed sketch on page 191 in the upper right hand corner. You'll see this drawing. I made it a little bit smaller in order to fit on the page. You can see the true scale here in relation to my hand. And just adding a little extra weight to the very bottom line. And voila, we're almost finished. Let's get that little overlap there, get that vent a little bit stronger, and that'll overlap those little fins a little nicer. There we go. So it's one of my favorite techniques, Copic marker and ballpoint pen. Hope you enjoyed it.